And we're live. How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and we're back at it with the latest edition of the latest Mets news and rumors this offseason. This is our second live show, really covering everything going on in Metropolitan land this offseason. And we have plenty of key updates to get into on David Stearns and his latest remarks. A lot to break down, and really what is highlighting tonight's discussion is Pete Alonso. Is he staying? Is he leaving? What is the latest on the Pete Alonso front? And what should we be buying into when it comes to remarks that we're hearing from the media and David Stearns himself? And what should we not be buying into as fans with what we're hearing from media as a whole? I have a lot to say and a lot to debunk on that front, which I'm excited to get into. Then we have some other key updates as well. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, we have an update on him, one of the most coveted pitchers available in this year's free agent class that the Mets are certainly going to be heavily involved with. That's been reported over the past couple of months now. We have plenty of updates not only on Yamamoto, but also kind of getting a feeler for the type of players that the Mets could be targeting this offseason. We're going to be expanding on that a little bit more, and next week will be a massive discussion when it comes to who they should be targeting in the free agent and trade markets alike. But Francisco Lindor, it was just announced over the past couple hours that he has won his third ever Silver Slugger Award. Congratulations to Francisco after being a home run and doubles galore machine that we saw this season for the New York Metropolitans. Plenty to get into along with answering all your comments, questions, and concerns as usual. Again, very happy to have you all in, so make sure to smash that like and subscribe on if you're first chiming in for consistent Mets coverage. We are the #1 Mets platform here on YouTube, not directly affiliated with the Mets or SNY, and I'm beyond humbled and grateful to say that because of you amazing Mets fans every single day watching the content, chiming in, sharing your opinions, and a lot of times either proving me wrong or sharing an opinion that I didn't think about before. I'm like, wow, that is a good point of view. Very happy that we had that interaction as fellow fans, but also do want to make clear with everyone that what is happening with the Mets right now, this is just the beginning, and a lot is going to be happening. This is a little bit of a slow roll of an offseason. We're already seeing many teams reportedly connected to certain players early on. Not too much with the Mets just yet, aside from reports that came out prior to the offseason beginning, but rest assured things will be picking up very, very soon as the Mets still have to address their coaching staff aside from their new manager hire, and of course the front office for any other roles that David Stearns is looking to potentially add on. But yeah, guys, I'm pumped up. Let's get into this one. Happy Thursday evening to you all, and of course, if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure you check out our latest edition of 5 Mets who will not be returning for the 2024 season video that dropped earlier today at the time of recording this. First year of that video absolutely popped off. It's the most viewed video on my channel. Only went 2 for 5 in my picks that year, funny enough, and because some of the guys I discussed weren't part with until that upcoming season around the trade deadline, like Dominic Smith and JD Davis, to name a few. But then this past off season, I went 5 for 5 in my picks, which I was impressed by. So I'm really curious to see how these picks went this year, and I want to know how you guys feel about them too. What 5 players do you anticipate to not be with the New York Metropolitans for this upcoming season? But let's get into everyone now. We have over 200 live viewers. Happy to have you guys. Make sure you're answering the poll as your first chime in too. Let's see. Professional certified hater, thank you so much. Castellanos and Soler, you are New York Mets. No, both of them will not be. One of them, though, that is certainly a possibility. Thank you so much for the donation. Kind of knowing that every other streamer with their top tier free agent predictions, they all say we aren't getting any of them. I don't see that happening at all. I know exactly who you're referring to. Cough, cough, Robbie, cough, cough, Jim, my mans in their respective channels. Please make sure to subscribe to Ballcap Sports, who just hit 40,000 followers, and Robbie Hyde, who is a phenomenal baseball YouTuber in his own right. Yeah, they didn't show too much love for what the Mets are going to land. I think that just comes down to the Mets being so involved every offseason the past number of years, and now having some uncertainty as to what their plans are for 2024 led to those things. But I'm going to tell you, not only as a biased Mets fan, but also being realist with following along with everything, what I wholeheartedly believe has a great chance of happening. More cautiously optimistic and more, feeling pessimistic on this front, even though I would love for it to happen. We'll certainly get into those discussions as well. John, thank you so much for a $10 donation. John says, love Shota Imanaga, similar to Senga, sub-3 ERA with 10.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Wouldn't be a bad middle rotation piece. If we miss out on Yamamoto, could try for him and maybe trade for Burns. Yeah, that trade for Burns discussion is something that we're going to have at great length, especially I think as soon as next week, guys. So like I said, I have a lot that I really want to share on the Pete Alonso front in tonight's live show, getting to plenty of your comments, questions, and concerns, but also breaking down more on David Stearns and his current connection and really relationship with Scott Boras. What is his outlook on the Mets, not only approaching their rotation this offseason, but the entire roster as a whole, including Daniel Vogelback, who I spoke plenty of in the video that came out earlier today, hence why he is currently on the thumbnail, unless I decide to change things depending on the traction of the video. But let's talk right now about the fact that after this stream, The next time that we will be live, unless it's breaking news, will likely be early next week. Next week, guys, buckle up. It is the start of specifically external targets, free agent targets, trade targets. I know that we've spoken at length about specific ones throughout the regular season leading up to the offseason, but we have a lot of discussing to do. We all know that's going to be a rumor mill filled for the entirety of the offseason until we find out everyone that the Mets are landing versus not landing. So stay tuned. All those thorough discussions and live shows specifically and individual videos of guys that we have yet to talk about on the channel really are all going to be apparent beginning next week. So stay tuned for that one. Really excited for it. Dave, my man, how are you, brother? So happy to have you in here. Great member, good friend of mine. Dave, God bless, man. Happy to have you in here. Major Editing, thank you so much for $10 holla. Major says, what's up, Wardy? This is Charles. Enjoy the 69 Mets poster. Hey, there we go. Everyone, can we please show some love in the chat for both my friends, Dave Kaplowitz, who's always beyond generous. Thank you so much, Dave, as always. And Major Editing, Charles, it is fantastic to meet you. Thank you so much for that donation. Again, really, not only the donation, but of course the poster. I have it beside me. I still have yet to put it on my wall somewhere. For those that don't know, Charles was beyond generous enough to bring my way 25th edition. Look at how awesome this picture is of the 1969 World Series champion New York Metropolitans. This, if I'm not mistaken, again, is as old as 1994 when this was made. So really, really cool. And again, beyond grateful and humble to be receiving this. Thank you so much, Charles, for not only your generosity, but your continued support. Very, very happy to have you, my friend. And again, thank you. Awesome stuff there from Charles. Dave, again, appreciate you. Charles, great member. As always, George, there we go. All you guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. But now let's talk. Let's get into the bullet points like we always do. I'm always long-winded with the intros when I know there's a plethora of topics that we have to get into. Charles to Charles, awesome Charles. Yes, you love to see it. But guys, let's talk about Pete Alonso, all right? I'm hearing a lot of things about Pete. I'm hearing that Pete, okay, there's a 50-50 shot he stays with the Mets this offseason. I'm hearing, okay, Pete, if he's going to be traded, these are the teams that will be headlining those talks, including the Chicago Cubs. I'm hearing, Pete, there's a great chance that there is a divide between himself and people in the clubhouse. You know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing a lot of yapping and not a whole lot of substance behind it. Not a whole lot of actually knowing what in God's name they're talking about. Whole lot of he said, she said, a whole lot of nonsense. And don't get me wrong. As a content creator, we love the rumor mill. We love to have these discussions. But here's the thing. Unless there's true substance to anything, we're not going to be really giving you the light of day, especially when it's on a topic regarding Pete Alonso. And what has come out of the mouths of both David Stearns, Scott Boras, and everyone in between alike over the past 24 to 48 hours should lead you to believe nothing different than Pete Alonso being a New York Met for at minimum the 2024 season, with hopes of a extension being done this offseason. And for the first time in a while, I actually have a level of optimism with said extension, specifically what Scott Boras had to say regarding exactly that. So let's get into this now. Boras spoke with David Stearns extensively over the past day or two, according to Boras himself, and he was giving, all the famous quotes and lines of just nonsense that he spews out of his mouth, try and make something sound witty when in reality he's just, he's grasping at straws at that point, and it almost feels like it's pulling teeth with how much he's going out of his way to try to have some funny or creative wordplay. Either way, Scott Boras, he is who he is, and there will be no changing Scott Boras. And him and Stearns both alike have a relationship. They know that. And when David Stearns was asked about his relationship with Scott Boras and ultimately having this type of financial flexibility now with the Mets, his reply was pretty obvious. And again, David Stearns at the young age of 38, looking like a kid in a candy shop every single day, talking to media, knowing that he has resources like never before versus his time in Milwaukee as president of baseball operations. Just a night and day difference with the amount of resources that you have and can utilize when acquiring players, both in the free agent and trade market alike, that we see in the offseason. But this quote specifically from David Stearns really resonated well with me. I went on my way to tweet this earlier this morning, and I quote, "I think we may be talking about at times a slightly different segment of his clientele now that I'm with the Mets," with a smirk on his face. What is David Stearns saying? Yeah, I'm actually able to swim with the big fish for a change. I can go deep sea fishing. I'm with the dogs right now. I'm shopping in Whole Foods. No more Walmart. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference in levels here. It feels nice for David Stearns, I'm sure, that I can come in as a diehard fan and basically say, hey, you know what? Money really isn't an issue here. I can go out, get the guys I think are best for this team, both short-term and long-term. That is beyond exciting. And again, every single day we're seeing David Stearns talk. He gets me more juiced up because he's, one, comes off far more relatable than I feel like we've seen with other GMs or Povos in years past. And two, you can just tell truly in a similar fashion to Cohen that he wants this and he's really passionate about this, that this isn't really just a job. And when you can have a dream job the way that David Stearns is having, yes, you're going to have days where work feels like work because you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, there's a lot going on, especially if the team is not succeeding and you're trying to really rectify things by patching things up mid-season. While that is true, there's also something to be said about going into it every day and knowing that, wow, like, pinch me, I'm really able to control the ball club that I grew up idolizing for my entire life. The same way that every single time that I'm up here talking to you guys, aside from some brutal Mets losses that we saw this year where I genuinely did not want to turn on the camera and talk about it because it was the same nonsense, just a different night, it never feels like work with what I do because I'm not only passionate about it, but at the end of the day, I'm just a Mets fan that's a diehard fan that gets to talk about this team for a living, and thankfully it resonates well with a lot of you fellow fans. So that's really my biggest takeaway today when discussing Stearns. And, you know, he also made it abundantly clear, reiterated multiple times, that Alonso is a very important player for this club and that he is going to be here for opening day. He does not anticipate at all for Alonso to be traded this offseason. And while he did make note that we're never going to put, you know, any fingers in the sand, we're never going to say never to anything, you know, of course, I'm going to be saying right now that we do not intend on Pete Alonso for obvious reasons, train him, right? And now let's not forget, prior to this, we did hear reporting over the past 2 months that the Mets and Alonso had already begun extension talks. That would have been with Billy Yelper, of course. So what was the status then versus now? That's a great question. Things have maybe went back to square one. I have no clue where the current status of those potential extension talks are. But what really stands out to me is what Scott Boras had to say to the media regarding said extension talks, stating that he is open to these extension talks. Like, he really did not scoff at it, and again, continue to speak glowingly of the Mets and what they're trying to do. Of course, both Boras and Cohen alike have a very strong relationship. They've worked plenty together. Literally, Cohen has been Boris's biggest client since Cohen became owner, with the amount of money he's making. Yes, the whole Correa situation last year bothered Boras, I'm sure, with the constant back and forth, him just trying to make as much money as possible, both for him as kind of like that being and Carlos Correa. But the point still stands. They have a really strong relationship. He knows that the Mets will be continuing to be spenders for years after years. It just varies to what degree based on the current status of the club heading into that said offseason. But, you know, they have that relationship, and for him to already express, you know, the willingness and the understanding to have these extension talks leads you to believe that, yes, Pete Alonso has definitely been having a say here. He's not letting Boras exactly describe and go over everything in these extension talks. We know Alonso wants to be a New York Met. And we know that Alonso wants to be a New York Met in almost a different way than how Jacob deGrom stated he wanted to be here. These feelings were different. deGrom, while he loved being a Met and was very passionate about being here, has openly said since then that he has liked the change of scenery in Texas, and how it's far more familiar to him and how really he goes about his life versus the hecticness that you, of course, see there in Queens, in New York with the Mets. And yes, Pete Alonso is a Floridian. You know, he's a guy that isn't necessarily used to the hecticness in the city, but he embraces it. And that's something that I think you could see differences between the two. Alonso has embraced what it means to not only be a New York Met, but embrace the surrounding area, becoming a little bit more of a city boy. We have seen that in recent years with Alonso, which just further makes me believe, not only as a fan, but as someone who's paying very close attention to everything between Alonso and the Mets and their future or potentially lack thereof, that has led me to the conclusion here and the conclusions of many of you fans that, yes, he's not going anywhere, at least for the time being. So for all the people out there that are just loving the idea of Pete Alonso for sure being traded to the Chicago Cubs of all teams among other clubs this offseason, you know, until proven otherwise, stop it. This is just ridiculous. And I, as a content creator, know damn well that if I wanted to, I could just make a video right now about how John Morosi said there's a 50-50 shot Pete Alonso stays with the Mets this offseason. That video would do great with traction because it's a hot button topic. But why am I talking about that when it's just one man's opinion prior to David Stearns even making his remarks to the media, mind you. It's just an opinion from a talk. It's no different than my opinion. It's just what opinion matters more to you. There's no substance behind that. It's just personally an opinion. That's all it is. So until something drastically changes on the Alonso front from reporting that leads us to believe that, okay, there actually is some substance here as to Alonso, maybe extension talks fell through. Maybe he is actually being considered on the trade market heavily. That would be a different discussion we had at that time. But I'm going to do my best as not only a Mets fan, a content creator, but more than anything, just as someone that's trying to be as true and genuine as possible to not drag things out on the Pete Alonso front and the rumor front. I know there's going to be a lot of it this offseason, so I know this will not be, this is the farthest from the last that we will have these type of discussions with Alonso this offseason. But unless things drastically change again, you will not see me trying to make something out of nothing. And right now, when it comes to Alonso going anywhere else, that's a whole lot of nothing until proven otherwise. Let's see here. Hey, Worry. Hope I've been well. I've been great and Sandy. Long time no see, my man. Happy to have you in here. Thank you for the support. I see Weblub. I see Michael. I see Bobby. We have roughly 400 live viewers. Thank you so much, everyone, chiming in as we're bringing down the latest news and rumors in Mets land, highlighting Pete Alonso and what's been going on with him and potential extension talks. Is he staying? Is he leaving? Getting into the latest on David Stearns and his remarks, not only with Alonso, but just being the man at the helm, leading the way for the Mets as their new president of baseball operations. Again, the guy's just so bubbly. I'm loving every second of it. And yes, I'm also a sucker. It's not too hard to sway me to make me think, oh, this is looking good. But at the same time, the vibe feels different in a way that I really can't explain too much with David Stearns. But it's a comforting feeling, and it doesn't feel like that there's this big wall barrier in the way that we've seen even with Billy Epler. And Epler wasn't bad in his pressers, you know, and he really, even last offseason when he had the smirk of talking, basically inadvertently talking about Kodai Senga, you know, he was very confident that the Mets are going to push hard for him. And it was cool to see those genuine reactions where they couldn't hide it. But then you think of the Sandy Aldersons, right? And you think of many other guys at the helm in years past, not only for the Mets, but other clubs, where they're just robots, where they're completely not showing you anything. You have no clue. You know, they're going to give you a whole lot of nothing, like Buck Showalter and many of his pressers, which the media loved because he was witty, but in reality, he was also giving you a whole lot of nothing at the end of the day with trying to expose things or more lack thereof. So now let's kind of get into a discussion on Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And MVP Scott, thank you so much for the membership, 18 months. Appreciate you, my man. Love you so much. The champion membership, the champion membership is right. We have to change those. I've tried multiple times, and for whatever reason, YouTube kept rejecting it. I'm going to have to continue to do that. No less. Appreciate the support, no less, my friend. Should MLB have a free agent signing deadline, John? As a content creator, I would love that. It would be so much fun. It would make things more hectic, kind of like how we saw leading into the MLB lockout, right? I wouldn't be opposed to that because it would make my life easier, at least knowing that, okay, by this date, 100% signings are going to be happening. The one thing that sucks as a content creator, especially when you cover the Mets, where you cover every single damn thing they do in an offseason, you know, I'm stuck at home a lot of the times, you know, or if I'm caught on the road and breaking news happens, I pull over, I have to talk about it right away. I have to get set up. I have to work on the fly. I do a lot of prep work as is, but even with that prep work, there's still so much uncertainty as to what's going to happen and when. So yes, I'm in favor of that for sure. I don't think that would be a bad thing whatsoever. Salute, Dwayne. What's up, my brother? Happy to have you in here. You can't change it with people on it, sadly. Oh, okay. That makes more sense, MVP. That makes a lot more sense. Okay. When Stearns finally DFAs Vogelback, the offseason will already get a grade of A+. Before we get into the Vogelback discussion, let's talk about Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So, Yoshinobu Yamamoto was brought up when David Stearns was discussing with MLB Network, and Harold went out and they were talking about the Japanese pitchers and didn't specify Yamamoto, but Stearns kind of slipped up and said that, you know, while I haven't been to Japan this year to watch pitchers, I have been watching pitching film, Japanese pitching film, like recently. More recently, and you know, Harold's kind of like, I got you, like, you basically just told me about Yamamoto before, like, when we weren't even saying specifically him, so thank you for that. And Stearns kind of went choked up, and he's like, oh, You know, like you're sneaky, like you got, I don't know how I missed that or whatever. So it was kind of funny. It was the same smirk and look exactly that Billy Epler had a year ago when talking about Kodai Senga and like the Mets interest level in him and wanting him. So yeah, the Mets want Yoshinobu Yamamoto, but so do the Yanks, so do the Giants, so do the Cubs, so does the Dodgers, so does like every team in baseball. So the Mets, while they have money that they can certainly part with, upwards of $200 million is what it's likely going to take for this guy, if not more. But this is still, at the end of the day, a New York Mets ran team that, while they may have the money, there are other factors that come into play. And that's going to be a key notion here with Yamamoto, and really hoping that, especially a Kodai Senga being on this club, can help the Mets in the right direction, as Senga has been going out of his way to make it clear that he wants Yamamoto, and is making it known to Yamamoto himself, which is pretty sick. He's made it known in Japan. He's made it known in the Mets front office with David Stearns. He's not holding back. He's like, give me Yoshi. And my reply is, give me Yoshi too, man. That's what we would love to see. But Yamamoto will be officially posted within the next week. From there, MLB teams will have approximately 45 days to sign Yamamoto or not. If not, then he would then go back to, New York Rangers just scored within the first minute of the third period to make it a 2-1 game. Alexi Lafreniere gets the score, and it's a 2-1 Rangers lead over the Minnesota Wild. That is my cutaway to a Ranger game as a Rangers fan. So if you're Islanders fan or if you hate the Rangers, I'm sorry, I know you hate that segment. Just swallow the pill. You can deal with it. Getting back into Yamamoto for a second, though, he will be posted within the next week, 45 days for him to sign somewhere. But there is also a potential belief that it will not take him too long to sign either. There may be a quick bidding war on the Yamamoto front. And while, of course, things could drag, I would not be shocked if Yoshinobu Yamamoto signs with a club within the next month. That wouldn't shock me in the slightest. So that's something that we'll be following intensely. Definitely, in my opinion, personally, I know that this might seem a little crazy to some people, but as talented as Aaron Nola is, as talented as Blake Snell is, as talented as Jordan Montgomery is, as talented as many of these pitchers are currently active in the free agent market, there is no one more appealing to me as a fan, as someone who has been quickly informed on Yamamoto quite a bit this year, than exactly him, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I desperately want this man in this Mets rotation. I really hope the Mets do everything in their power to land him. I mean, the guy has won Japan's version of Cy Young 3 consecutive times, including this year winning the Triple Crown. He's pitched a boatload of innings at a young age, and yet has a career 1-point-something ERA. Just had another remarkable season. In his final start in playoffs, the guy was absolutely dominant, literally denied all the haters of everyone talking down on him from his previous playoff performances. The fastball life, the off-speed pitches, he has everything you're looking for. And yeah, he's at the age of 25, 5 years younger than Kodai Senga, an uber amount of potential. Just, I cannot say enough great things about Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and I need this guy in this Mets rotation. I will be genuinely pissed off if the Mets do not land him. Not necessarily pissed at the Mets, just pissed that it didn't happen, because that's how bad I want this guy. Let's see. Sign Yoshi, Hader, Hendricks, Giolito, and Teoscar. Not all those things are happening. One of them, though, at minimum, I certainly can see, if not two. But probably not necessarily the ones you may think. Trade for season Soto, 10 out of 10 offseason. Or friend, you got it all figured out. Those are all names that we'll be discussing this offseason for certain. But the Mets are likely not going to land. Best case scenario probably there is if they land 3. Worst case, 1. You should cover Knicks. I do on and off again on the side on Knicks Media with my man Richie Malora, who has a fantastic Knicks account. Make sure to subscribe to him on YouTube if you haven't already. Knicks had an awesome, dominant win last night over Wemby and those Spurs. And Wemby, who is a phenomenal talent in his own right, definitely looked like a kid there. Looked insecure there, was getting outmatched like crazy by Mitch the entire game when they matched up. Just a very impressive win by the Knicks yesterday for my Knicks fans out there. WardyNYM, would you trade for Cease? He has 2 years left to control. Yes, I would. Dylan Cease is actually one of my favorite pitchers in the league, which is funny considering how bad of a year he had. But I've been a big Cease fan ever since he arrived with the White Sox, which is why I've been a casual White Sox fan for a number of years. And that too will be leaving as they're blowing this thing up, because they prove that while you have uber amount of talent, endless amount of talent, stop with the damn uber word. I'm an idiot. Endless amount of talent and just too many injuries, incompetent coaching, and just an owner from top down that has no clue what they're doing. They literally just gave away their phenomenal play-by-play broadcaster to the Detroit Tigers too. I mean, like, what? That was like the one good thing they had for the upcoming year, and you allowed that to go away too. Like, congratulations, Southside, on being an absolute shit show. Sounds like a day that ends in Y. Let's see. Boo F the Rangers. I knew we were going to see that. That's funny. Tyler Ward Grant. What's up, my man? How are you? Shout out Grant. Happy to have you in, brother. Kay, a while back I mailed you 3 New York Post World Series posters and a 2015 Harvey DeGrom magazine. Never saw if you received it. Hey, I'm so glad you brought that up, Kay, because if I'm not mistaken, I do recall receiving that. However, I don't believe I had a contact in which I could contact. I know I gave a shout out, Kay. So very interested. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kay, that came with a letter, did it not? I'm almost certain if it came with a letter, then yes, you're exactly like what I'm thinking here. And thank you so much again for those gifts. I greatly appreciate it. I have them that far. Actually, I was just looking at the magazine, one of them 2 weeks ago. Literally not even, because I know for certain. I was going through a bunch of Mets magazines I have because I'm planning on ones I want to frame on the walls, not necessarily just behind me, but around the surrounding area of my room. But Kay, yeah, let me know. If you had a letter, if you had like a note with that, then I'm almost certain that I've shouted you out. And thank you so much again for all that. That was beyond generous and kind of you. Really, really appreciate you doing that. Grant, thank you so much for a $2 hollow, you beauty. Let's get some love in the chat for my man, Grant. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But we talked about Yamamoto. We've talked about Stearns' latest remarks. Now let's get into a little bit more. That came out over the past couple days, but still, David Peterson is going to be out 6 to 7 months after having surgery, which means that an arm that the Mets were hoping to have as a guy that could compete for, at minimum, that 6th rotation spot. Especially if the Mets sign Yamamoto, they're going to want rotation of a 6-man, more than likely, or at least have that flexibility to do that for the regular season. Pearson, who had a very up and down year to say the least, do not even get me started on David Pearson's 2023 campaign. He's going to be out now until basically the second half of the season, and because of that reason, David Pearson, is a guy that the Mets, while I didn't expect them to rely on much heading into 2024, now have even more holes for their rotation. And I'm actually going to say something that, I don't mind saying now, but there was one player I was going to initially discuss in the video that came out today on 5 Mets who will not return for 2024. There was one player that was not only a wild card player, but someone that I knew was going to cause plenty of questions and backlash, even though that there is an understanding. But after losing David Peterson now, there's just no way, in my opinion, to justify doing this, even with there being a greater good to come out of it. And that is trading, get ready for this, Jose Quintana. Now, the reason why I was initially going to put him in the video, he was going to be on the thumbnail. I knew it was going to be getting a lot of traction, but I decided not to do it because I really do not see it happening now at this juncture. Because why would the Mets trade away their second best starting pitcher when they still need to address like at minimum 3 stars for their rotation? Great question. And that's exactly why I didn't put him in the video. However, the counter was, this is a Mets team that has basically said, if you're an expiring contract after 2024, you are up for grabs. Like, we're willing to part ways with you. And it wouldn't shock me in the slightest to see a David Stearns ran Mets trade away Quintana while having a strong value after impressing with the Mets, coming back from his injury for the second half of the 2023 season. Has plenty of value, consistently eats innings, around 6 innings at minimum per start, has been sharp even as a veteran at this point in his career. Could be appealing for many clubs, and in return, the Mets could acquire more young, controllable pitching, knowing that Quintana is a guy that would have been parted with after the 2024 season, if not by the MLB trade deadline, depending on the status of the club. So I know that's crazy, but there's again, the reason why I decide not to do that is I can't foresee why the Mets would be that crazy to trade away that important of starting pitching depth when they have so many holes right now as is. Well, again, it wouldn't be the craziest thing if it happened, but I just want to explain the thought process behind it, why it would make sense for a Mets team that's focusing more than just 2024, but 2025, 2026, so on and so forth. Oh, Frank, thank you so much for a $10 holla. Frank, appreciate that a lot, my man. Happy to have you in here. Love you, brother. I'm a friend said, never say never with Uncle Steve. That is true. Never say never. Appreciate the donation. Yoshima, great member. Yoshima, hopefully we get Yoshi on our side soon enough. Howdy, trust in Stearns. Love to see it. Appreciate the donation, and thank you so much again for the support, everybody. Also, I don't know if he's in the live chat or if he's going to watch a replay, but Pebmets, who is an OG follower on the channel, I apologize for missing your donation last show the other night. You dropped a $20 donation. I do not believe I addressed it. So Pebmets, if you're you're watching this live or on replay, I sincerely apologize for not getting to your donation. I just missed it. It's as simple as that. But seriously, thank you so much. And next time that you have a question and you want to make sure it's answered, as long as I see you in the chat, make sure and I will make sure to answer for you, regardless on donation or not. Don't feel that you need to donate again to say get that same question or a different question answered. Thank you kindly, though, Pemmets. Appreciate that. Appreciate the endless support. But we've talked about what's going on with Alonso, what's going on with Boris. We talked about Stearns and the latest remarks. Now let's get into Joey Cora, hired with the Detroit Tigers. So Joey Cora, who has been the Mets third base coach throughout Buck Showalter's tenure, is now leaving the Mets and is going to coach with the Detroit Tigers and their staff that they have over there. Now, Joey, who I certainly liked during his time in Queens, of course, he has a good rapport and connection with Francisco Lindor, who grew up idolizing Cora. However, Joey, known for his aggressive third base style, had some really awesome flashes I felt we saw in 2022, but a part of me feels like that went more in hand with one, just his bubbly personality, exciting one, always juiced up, but two, because the Mets went from a Glenn Sherlock. Was it Glenn Sherlock? No. I'm trying to think. Who was the third base coach? Who was the third base coach? Garcino? Who was it? Who was the Mets' last third base coach prior to Joey Cora? Whoever it was, I'm blanking on the name right now. The guy was ridiculously conservative. Like, he was never letting the Mets run or be aggressive whatsoever. Cora is very good. Yes, I know people are going to be upset to see him gone, but he is no longer with us. With the Mets, at least he'll be with the Tigers. And Cora was also on an expiring contract, so is Wayne Kirby. So don't be shocked if Wayne Kirby's time in Queens is done too, which would be upsetting because Wayne Kirby is literally just an absolute beauty. I mean, we love the guy. But I think in part similar reasons why we love Daniel Vogelbach. You know what I mean? So, make of that information as you will. The Mets will be building their coaching staff over the next week or two. They will be continuing to address if there's anything that David Stearns would like to add to the front office. But coaching staff wise, while Jeremy Hefner is staying, Joey Cora is out. Wayne Kirby very well could be on the way out, and Eric Chavez very well could be on his way out too, depending on managerial openings that are still around, if at all, and also his interest level too, along with, of course, Carlos Mendoza and their relationship. How strong is that, if at all, from his time there as a special assistant to Billy Epler in the front office for the Yanks, along with having a very, very short stint as the assistant hitting coach there a couple years ago before that same offseason, going away from the Yanks and coming to the Mets to be their full-time hitting coach for Buck Showalter. Yeah, it was DeSarcina. Yes. And before him, Tim. Yes. Yep. Glad I was on the money. I was almost certain it was DeSarcina. I just want to make sure of that. So who's going to be the new bench coach? Gabe Copper, old school dying baseball. I don't see the Mets bringing in Mattingly for their bench coach. I do not foresee that happening. It would be cool. It would be sick. It would be actually really cool if the Mets were able to do something like that. I don't know who they're going to go with bench coach right now. Truthfully, I do not know. But it seems like that they're definitely steering more in the direction of a veteran manager, a guy who, like, again, has managed at the MLB level, potential playing experience as well, and recent managerial experience. That is the case for Mattingly, who's just a year removed from last managing the Marlins. And when we look at the Phil Nevins of the world, when we look at the Gabe Kaplers, like, they were literally managing this year. So I can understand the Mets' thought process behind doing that, especially when you have an inexperienced manager, Mendoza. While, yes, he did manage 24 games for the Yanks, even though he was just the bench boss because of everything going on with Aaron Boone over the past couple of years, he's still someone that will not hurt at all by having that experience. And speaking for a second, Carlos Mendoza, I want to highlight what, a lot of Yanks have been saying a lot of great things about Mendoza and how he's such a great get for the Mets. But Anthony Volpe, of course, rookie for the Yanks, who had a strong rookie year, spoke so glowingly of Mendoza. And when asked about Mendoza's role, he said, yeah, man, like, he was the one who led, like, our meetings, when it came to lineup, when it came to, strategy, a lot of things. Like, he was the guy that was leading a lot of the meetings for the Yanks. Like, he had a lot of say and a lot of connection. Now, I know you're also probably wondering, okay, is that necessarily a good thing with the lack of success the Yanks have had? But that, in my opinion, is far more on roster construction than it is the role or lack thereof of a bench boss, that being the case in Carlos Mendoza. The Yanks, heading into 2023, with all the same holes that they had the year prior, similar to the Mets, aside from the Mets filling the void of losing Jacob deGrom, losing some other key players throughout that previous offseason, and, Chris Bassett, Taijuan Walker, they filled the rotation again, but offensively, the team wasn't any different besides rookies like Francisco Alvarez. So it's funny how both those teams at the same time really didn't do nearly enough in hindsight to bolster more on impactful players in the lineup, also helping that pitching depth and the bullpen when needed. It's interesting to say the least. David Ross, if he has interest, I have no clue how David Ross is feeling right now because I'm sure he feels blindsided with everything that happened with him in Chicago. Beatty, Parada, and Jarvis for Soto, not going to happen for fun. And I know you're specifically referencing a trade proposal probably from, pardon me, from Bleacher, in which, guys, for those that don't know, I was on Bleacher Report the other day. If you go on their app right now and go to Mets and scroll down, actually, I'll show you guys right now. I was on there talking about 3 Juan Soto Mets mock trades. I actually tweeted them out today as well. Actually, I'll just share them with you guys. We'll have a fun discussion quick. Want to know how you're feeling. I'll discuss them at further length in the future, but I put this on Twitter. This was from a couple days ago when Bleacher Report had me on for my debut show with them. Shout out to them again. It's been awesome working with them. But my proposal number 1 was easily the most Padres leaning and heartbreaking to all Mets fans. But the reason why I did this is when you see not only option 2 but 3, they are more favorable to the Mets. So I kind of want it to be both ways, and also kept in the back of my mind the assumption that if Soto is dealt, the Mets will pretty much have an extension locked in with him as soon as humanly possible, right? So to the Padres, trade proposal number 1, I have right here: Luis Angel Acuna, Jet Williams, Christian Scott. That's Mets number 1, number 3, and number 12 prospects per MLB pipeline. No, I do not want Williams or Acuna dealt whatsoever, and I was not happy even making this. But again, the point is, this is for the Padres fans that think I'm going to be a biased Homer Mets fan, when in reality, I'm being more rational. You could even say this is irrational in a lot of ways, as an overpay for a rental when there still is an extension guaranteed locked in. Proposal number 2, Drew Gilbert, Brett Beatty, Blade Tidwell. Mets number 2 prospect, Brett Beatty, who had an underwhelming rookie year, and Blade Tidwell, Mets number 10 prospect. Trade proposal number 3, and this is the one most Mets fans like: Kevin Parada, Ryan Clifford, Mike Vassell. Number 5, number 6, and number 9 prospects for Juan Soto. And it's okay if you don't like any of them, and there's no saying that any of those things would happen. But I really wanted to make sure that I did not go into those discussions and really come off as that homer, that biased fan. Because all proposals I feel like we see, including that Jarvis one, is nonsense. Like, when for even 1 second do you realistically think that that kind of trade is what's going to get done to get Juan Soto? Even as a rental, it's not. For people that don't think that's going to cost an arm and a leg to get Juan Soto, I'm sorry, but there's just, I just don't see a world where that doesn't happen, right? It's going to happen if he's dealt. It's going to be a bag that the Padres get in return, whether it's prospect or on-field talent. Either way. Yeah, I'm not giving up on Beatty whatsoever. It's not about giving up on him. It's just about what you need. I mean, you could throw Vientos in there instead of Brett if you want. You know what I mean? It's not about my personal feeling or viewpoint on these players. It's the fact that at the end of the day, all these guys I discussed, you can make fair arguments for to a degree to part with if you get Juan Soto and you extend him long term. Juan Soto is not just any Joe Schmo. He is a generational talent in many ways and would be impactful for this New York Mets team for the next decade, to say the least. And Lindor won his third Silver Slugger today. I'm just trying to think if there's any other key Mets updates I've missed, because we will be wrapping things up within the next 10 minutes, guys. So if you aren't already, please make sure you continue to smash that like and subscribe button. I don't know where we're at in the like count, but if we could end the live show with 200 plus likes, that would be greatly appreciated. Continue smashing those buttons. For people on replay, same applies. Also help us get to 25,000 subscribers. That is our next subscriber goal. We have a lot of amazing things coming this offseason with consistent Mets coverage. Like I said, all next week will just be, aside from actual news that happens and things separate, reported things that we will of course discuss, but separate from that, we're diving fully into targets, baby. It's target time. It's been long enough. I got some really key discussions I got to get into on guys the Mets have either currently been connected to or potentially will be connected to in the coming weeks this offseason. Surprised Arcia didn't win Silver Slugger over Lindor. I know, yeah. That'd be fun. Almost good one, Lindor. Something that he would say, right? If you know, you know. Or fan, thank you for another donation. Padres need to shed salary, maybe throw in cash. Padres don't need to shed salary as much as it was kind of made out to be. They're going to be okay. Give me 1 second, everybody. Hold on, everybody. Just realized you made yourself look just like Alonso. Why do some people think I look like Alonso? Like Conforto for a bit, I understood and I appreciate that because Michael was my favorite player when he was a Met. But I met Pete too earlier this year at McNeil's charity event. There's no similarity. The height, one, I'm looking straight up to the freaking sky to talk to this guy. And two, there's just no. The only thing Pete Alonso and I have in common when it comes to facial features or just features in general is we both have like alopecia. Like he gets alopecia spots in the back of his head and they move. So do I. I don't know if I currently have one, but I usually get them here. Then they'll go to the back of my head. They'll move different sides. That's like the only thing I know that Pete and I both have going together. Brewers are willing to trade anyone for Burns. Would we have to take Yelich? That's a good question. I don't think it would be having to take Yelich in that situation. No, it just depends on the type of return you're willing to give up. Brewers, definitely a team we're going to talk about a lot. It seems like that everyone is on the table for them to a degree. But yeah, I'm excited to get into that Brewers discussion too. And Brewers fans are not going to enjoy it. And I apologize in advance to them because I know that they're still pissed off about Counsell. But we have to do what we have to do because this is certainly a Mets team that has connections to Milwaukee. As long as their owner doesn't say, hey, we're not trading with the Mets, which wouldn't shock me, knowing the schmuck that he is. Aside from that, yeah, a lot of Brewers-Mets discussions will be had. Wardy, when does free agency begin and where players can sign with new teams? Oh, free agency's already begun, Mikey. Free agency is already underway, but you got to keep in mind that a lot of times it's a little bit of a slow roll with free agency, especially depending on the players, because there's tiers of players. And what's their priority? Is it just signing right away, or is it dragging things down to see how much they can impact the market? And a lot of players are also waiting for other dominoes to fall, and there will be some top players that absolutely drag out and wait until they find out the result of Shohei Ohtani, because where Ohtani lands dictates what happens with teams of their vision this offseason. If the Dodgers get Ohtani, that means that their likelihood of getting Yamamoto is far slimmer. If the Mets get Ohtani, then that means that their likelihood of landing even a Yamamoto is likely slimmer. If, say, Yamamoto goes to the San Francisco Giants, then okay, that means that the Mets could find themselves more involved in a Jordan Montgomery or an Aaron Nola market. Like, these things change a lot. It's all indicative on how the other guys do in their tiers. You have Ohtani, which is tier 1. Then you get to tier 2, which is pretty much starting pitching, led by Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Aaron Nola, Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery. That's your core there. Then you get on to the player front. And really, when it comes to bats this offseason, the bat, if I'm not mistaken, that stands out the most with the guy that's going to get the most money, aside from I was going to say Shota Imanaga, Shohei Ohtani, is Cody Bellinger. Belly is the big one. Like, is he going to get a long-term contract? Is he going to get $200+ million? Like, that very well could happen. But that's like the big one. So when these guys once we start to see some moving parts, is really when we'll start to see the floodgates open. We're just not there yet. It's very early on still. Same beard structure, I guess. Maybe a little bit. Oh. Are you mad about a bench coach being our manager? No, I'm not mad about that. No. Tyler, are you going to do a live stream like you usually do in free agency when players start signing on teams? Not necessarily just for free agency as a whole, but specifically if there are guys that say land elsewhere that the Mets were heavily targeting, then yeah, absolutely. And of course, our usual Mets free agency frenzy streams that we did a plethora of last offseason. And Blake Wheeler, I think, just scored his first as a Ranger. It's 3-1 Rangers on the power play in the third period for you Ranger fans out there. You love to see it. Little tap in there on the right side. For me, we're going to get a lot of free agency frenzy live streams. Very similar format to this, pretty much. Not much different. We'll just have listed, instead of these topics, it'll be like all the latest on the targets and who exactly the targets are. Or if we're talking specifically more on pitchers one night, then we're talking on infielders another night. Then we're talking outfielders / DH, bullpen. Like, those are going to be awesome discussions, and it will take up all the offseason. Absolutely. Along with having special guests on the shows and just getting very creative with the type of discussions we have. And more than anything, just following along. I understand that there's always an appeal for content more that is just news and rumor based, and we will certainly do our best to do that. But especially this time of year, all the hubba, all what most people care about, and for good reason, is the moves that will be had or won't be had, both internally, externally. And I'm really excited to get into it all, besides what we've done at this point. Let's see. One more thing I want to talk about, guys, and then we're going to wrap things up. The Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves just lost 2 key pieces to their coaching staff over the past 24, 48 hours. That starts with Ron Washington. Ron Washington, who is a phenomenal baseball mind, gets another shot at it as a manager, this time with a team where I have concerns for his sake and how he's going to do there, because they have such a piece of shit owner in Artie Moreno. And I have no problem saying that every day of the week. However, Ron Washington is now the skipper of the Halos, which means that his time as the long-time third base coach for the Braves has come to an end. And that's huge, because Ron Washington was in many ways a Swiss Army knife for the Braves. He was their secret weapon. He helped out guys like, not only Acuna, but Albies in that infield especially so well over the years. I mean, Ron is not only a phenomenal baseball mind, but there's so much history with him, and he's one of those guys that is not old school in the sense of he's fully aware on today's game and how to play it. And he's had a great experience being in the coaching staff with the Braves for a number of years. Now he goes over to Atlanta, and he brings Eric Young Sr., longtime first base coach for the Braves, now goes over to him, and he'll be first base coach there, if I'm not mistaken, with the Angels. Other key names entering this club that I need to share with you guys right now: a truly star-studded coaching staff by the Halos. And what does this lead me to believe? They're trying to do their best Texas Rangers impression. They're desperately trying to do everything they can to revamp their coaching staff, have veterans in there who do either have championship success or have gotten close to the dance before, similar to what, of course, Bochy built, even though Bochy had that star-studded resume that just trumps everything that was hired by the Halos here. And the Rangers, of course, spent and operated in a way that we're all going to be surprised if they do this offseason, because they need to keep Ohtani first, which is their biggest problem to begin with. But coaching staff-wise, have to give a lot of credit. I'm really interested to see how this Halos team is going to operate, because when you look at the list here, guys, let's get into it. Ron Washington, the first African-American manager hired in 3 years, also plans to have a star-studded, diverse coaching staff. This, of course, comes from Bob Nightingale, everyone's favorite reporter over the past day. Chili Davis, Mets hitting coach. Pete Alonso's favorite man, and which he cried over when Chili was parted with and early into the 2021 season. Chili will be the hitting coach. Torrey Hunter, first base. Eric Young Sr., my mistake, he'll go from first to third. Clint Hurdle, former MLB manager, bench coach. And Ryan Goins, another big name, infield coach. That's a crazy coaching staff. Like, in all seriousness, like I really hope that works for Halos fans. I really hope that they finally figure out something there. Without Ohtani, of course, because he'll be with the New York Mets. But aside from that, wishing you all the best and all the success. What's up, Fern? How you doing, my man? I know we got the Philly fan here. How you doing, brother? That he's not going to be the first base coach? Okay, well, there goes that. That's actually... Okay, so Torrey Hunter, according to Ash, told AJ Przinsky, I'm sure on foul territory, that he's not going to be first base coach. Does that mean that he's not going to be coach at all, or that he's just not going to be first base coach? Is there clarity on that you could elaborate with before we head out of here? What's my thoughts on Soler? Really, really like Jorge Soler. I think he's absolutely one of the best DH/corner outfield options for the Mets to acquire this offseason via the free agent market. And rest assured, we will be talking more at length of Jorge Soler plenty next week. He will be one of a plethora of players on the hitting front that I'm really excited to get into. With that being said, everybody, that is going to do it for the show. I want to thank you all so much, everyone that watched live or on replay. Thank you all so much for the likes, the subscriptions, the donations, and just your continued support, everybody. Unless breaking news happens, this will likely be the last form of content that we come out with until either Monday or Tuesday next week. So I hope everyone has a phenomenal weekend. Like I said, barring any breaking news, of course, if there are any specific topics or news that come out, I may have to do content. The only difference is that I might just be on the fly, might not be as pretty of a setup because I'll be out of town for the weekend. Actually going to be seeing James Madison University. A phenomenal start to that college football program this year, and they have a big game this weekend. I will be there. which is random, but I'm looking forward to it. So rest assured, if any news or anything like that happens, your boy might just have a little mic clipped on and doing it from his phone, but will still be me, just might not be in the same form that you're accustomed to seeing. So until then, have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this, Mets fan. Stay tuned and make sure to check out that top 5 video that came out earlier today in case you haven't already. Big video, really want to know your thoughts on it. Thank you so much again for the endless support, and as always, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.